So before we start the interview, we always like to find out a little bit more about you. So we're just going to do like rapid fire, and I want to see where you're at. Okay. So favorite hobby?
Favorite hobby was triathlons. And I did 220 of them. I was a competitive swimmer growing up, and so that was probably my biggest one. But to this day, I like to stay in shape, and so sports is probably my biggest thing. Pickleball is one of my new ones.
Really?
So, yeah.
Okay. Haven't played pickleball yet, but I want to get out there. On that, favorite thing to do when you're not here?
Yeah. Probably I would say financial planning. No, I'm kidding. I do like to rest and relax. It's pretty high stress, job that I have, and so I like to find ways, primarily through music. I'm learning how to play the guitar, relearning how to play the guitar, and bought a piano a couple of years ago, and I want to learn how to play that too. And I think retirement will give me the option to do that pretty often, and then I'm a singer as well, and so it'll all fit together. But I won't be doing any coffee houses or anything like that. So.
And last one, since you talked about music, favorite artist of all time?
Boy, that's a tough one. It's actually probably James Taylor as an individual. But as a group, probably the Eagles. I have to go with the Eagles. I've seen them in concert, I think 3 or 4 times now, and just love them. So.
What's going on, y'all? Welcome to Financial Seeds, where we believe that financial freedom takes place one conversation at a time. I'm your host, JimDre Westbrook. And every week, we are here to empower families to go from striving to thriving when it comes to their finances, one conversation at a time. Today is a very special day, y'all. We are in a brand new studio, the Scott Arkills production studio, with our first guest on the pod. And you already know who it is. It is no other than our president and CEO of Silver State Schools Credit Union, Mr. Scott Arkills. Welcome, Scott, to Financial Seeds.
Thank you, JimDre. Appreciate that.
Before we go any further, I must say that because this is a historical event, Scott, we really appreciate you giving your blessing to the podcast. Absolutely. Without your blessing and the executive management team, we wouldn't be here. So for me, on behalf of all the lovely coworkers, we want to say thank you because we know how important this is to you and to our community.
Yeah, absolutely. And we think it's absolutely critical to get the news out, and who better to deliver the news than you, JimDre. I think you do a fantastic job, and so just happy to be here.
Thank you. So before we kind of dive into all of the conversation and the questions, I want to hear from you, exactly what you do here at this credit union, and how much financial education really means to you.
Yeah, and I'm glad you asked that. From my perspective, I'm the chief executive officer and president for Silver State Schools Credit Union. But, to me, financial literacy starts here at home. And I've often said, I've had other CEOs say, well, Scott, everybody does financial literacy, at the credit union level. But I said, as an education credit union, I think that it's really up to us to get that news out and to preach that and to do it better than anybody else does it. And so, and I think we do a great job of that. And so that's why I think, it's so important to, again, talk about financial literacy and financial wellness at all times.
I love it. And, when it comes to financial literacy, I'm sure a lot of people have different definitions.
Right.
Is it financial literacy, wellness, financial education? Is it all the same thing? So as we dive into the questions, I'd like for you to define what financial literacy is for you And why should our families even care about financial literacy and wellness?
I think that's a great starting question. Really, it's the ability to understand and start to implement the portions of what it means to have finances and what you do with them. And so it's really the purpose of getting again, the basics of financial literacy, whether that's savings or budgeting or that type of thing, and getting that out. And you can't start too early. That's one thing that I always want to emphasize. And nor can you start too late.
Yeah.
One of the things I think you teach all the time is that, hey, listen, parents, educators, students, they're all part of this financial literacy journey. And what's important is that everybody gets it, not when they get it.
Yeah, no, I love the fact that you brought up never too early, never too late.
Right.
Kindergartners
Yep.
know, what money is. Now,
Right.
their parents may say, oh, they don't get it, but they know about that iPad. They know that costs money. So I think it is very, very important to start them at a young age,
Right.
to understand the importance of money and how that can help them get the things they want and be responsible, even at that early age.
Absolutely.
So I love that you brought that up. Let's talk, since we're talking about families, could be some misconceptions that you may think are out there that families just have had forever? Maybe misconceptions that you grew up with your family or your
Right.
community, or what you're currently seeing. What are some of those misconceptions that are out there?
I think I'll start with, from a misconception perspective, I think that, we're all raised at different levels. I was raised in a blue collar household. We didn't have a lot when I was growing up. We were lucky to have McDonald's once a month as our special meal for the month. And so quite frankly, it was a push to do that. And what I think my parents always instilled in us is, hey, listen, there's a value to the dollars that you make. One of the things I love this, and one of the things I talk about all the time is we had a chore sheet, and really it spoke to how much effort you were going to put out and how much money you were going to make from that. And so for each thing you did, whether it was washing the dishes or whatever it was, that might be 10 cents. And I killed it every week or 2 weeks. And the reason why I killed it is because I wanted to earn that money. And plus I wanted to have value and show value at home. And so some of the misconceptions are, though, that money's not important, that it just happens. If you happen to have wealth as you're a child too, that's great, but that doesn't mean that you can't or shouldn't learn financial literacy things. And quite frankly, it's one of those things where sometimes that's probably the worst blessing with that is if you have money and you don't think about how to budget it, that's where it all goes wrong. And so you have to, you always have to be on your guard, I think, regardless of whether you're a grade schooler or elder adult. You have to be on your guard. You have to plan. You have to look ahead of what's going on. And so I think those are a lot of the misconceptions that happen out there.
Yeah, no, I love that you started talking about budgeting. And, a lot of people feel that if you make a lot of money, like, you don't need a budget.
Right.
Like I have it.
Right.
But I really feel that, a misconception, people think that budgeting essentially limits the spending,
Right.
and that if you have a budget, you can't do anything with it,
Right.
where it's really more of a healthy boundary that kind of just directs how you should spend your money so you can continue to keep growing it.
Right.
So, yes, have to be on guard, because without a plan, you essentially, your money doesn't spend the way it should. And that is a misconception. I think people feel restricted when they hear that word,
absolutely.
budget. Okay, we got a nice flow, and I love the questions. Let's talk about money conversations that parents should have with their kids.
Right.
This is something that, if I could speak for myself, we didn't have a lot of money conversations growing up, right? Like, I know that my parents had jobs and that they were paying for everything, but perhaps with conversations, all my dad told me was, hey, don't leave the house without any money.
Right.
that was it. He didn't
Yeah.
want me to even have the temptation to do something irresponsible.
Right.
So I always had money in my pocket, but I didn't necessarily have another lesson or more added on to that.
Right.
When do you feel kind of these conversations should happen with parents and their children about budgeting, about savings, about debt? What are your thoughts about that?
I think that it should start in preschool, and everybody thinks that well, it may be too early to start having those conversations. I was going to be a teacher. I think I've told you before. Well, I was teaching my children in my classroom, in my elementary classroom, what prepositional phrases were when they were in kindergarten, and they understood. So they get that. There's no cap on or ceiling or floor as to when children can start learning. And so I think parents should start that in preschool, and they should do it on a regular basis. And now it doesn't. Although I say parents. That's our hope, is to get the parents the education ourselves.
Yes.
Through Silver State Schools Credit Union. And we can do that, and we can help do that. But if that doesn't happen there, then it happens through us. It happens through school. I know financial literacy has become a big thing in school. And so I think the important thing, though, is not only to have those conversations starting in preschool, but then to do them regularly and talk about age-appropriate things. You're not going to talk about investments, for example, with a preschooler.
Right.
They're going to look at you with, although they got the prepositional phrase part, I don't think they're going to know what an investment is and nor how they should handle it. But what they can start to talk about is what the value of savings is, and why you need the dollar when you go out. As your dad taught you, is have money with you. Why? Because it helps you get the things that you want to. But then you can get into the next element, I think, is wants versus needs, and teaching that. I know that's something that you teach all the time, and really Bite of Reality is that too. It's teaching the wants versus needs. What is the important thing, and then you get into the budgeting part of that, and then again, I think by junior high, you can start having those conversations about, okay, what are you saving for now?
Yeah.
You're saving for your college. How much is it going to take? What can you depend on? And those kind of things. And then you get into more complex things in the later years of quite frankly, senior high school and that kind of stuff. And that is the investments. What kind of car you should buy, why you should buy it, what you should look for when you're buying a car, how do you budget properly for what percentage of your income should it be, those kind of things. And so, and again, start at preschool, but I think that it's a continuing journey. I think the more regularly it happens, I think the more likely that it's going to stick with them.
Yeah, no, I love that. And, money management, this whole thing isn't a one-time conversation like you're saying.
Right.
It should almost be this daily occurrence where people have a normal conversation, kind of like what we're having right now, where it's not this thing, this daunting task that you're afraid of it, but you welcome finding out those needs, those wants, understanding what a 50-30-20 rule when you get there. What are you saving for? Just, again, normalizing these conversations so when they happen, they are, essentially met with an emotion that is enjoyable. Even if you don't have a lot of money, just kind of learning those tools and those steps to maybe growing that and being open to all the information you're saying, such as those Bite of Reality events and workshops that we do have here at Silver State Schools Credit Union.
The Financial Seeds podcast is powered by Silver State Schools Credit Union. At Silver State Schools Credit Union, our focus is to provide excellent member service and financial solutions for life. Now is the perfect time to lock in lower payments and more savings with SSSCU's new even lower vehicle loan rates, now starting at just 4.99% annual percentage rate. That's 4.99% APR, available for both purchases and refinancing. Members can drive more and pay less with SSSCU's new lower rate of 4.99% APR. Visit silverstatecu.com/drive to learn more and experience why Silver State Schools Credit Union is banking done better. Silver State Schools Credit Union finances up to 100% of MSRP for new vehicles or the Kelley Blue Book retail value for used vehicles. Additional terms and conditions to qualify. May not be combined with other offers. Rates, terms, and conditions are subject to change without notice. Must be a member to apply. Visit silverstatecu.com for more details.
So when we talk about foundational blocks, right? Let's say if we're building this home, if you will, what are some of those foundational blocks that you feel parents need to build within their families when it comes to money management?
Yeah, I think the first thing is to understand financial concepts and, what does a certain thing mean? What does savings mean? Those kind of conversations. What's budgeting mean and why is it important?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not only having the discussion about what it is, but what it means, and getting very specific. So I think understanding those financial concepts is probably the first thing that I would say. The other thing is setting clear financial goals. There's a thing called the SMART approach. It's specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. Those are great lessons for students to learn as well as adults, quite frankly, when it comes down to it. And so I think if you set goals, I always loved it at any age that I was where I could set a goal. I knew I was going to go to college. I knew I wanted a car. And so I started telling my dad at 15, let's start looking for a car. I knew how much I was going to spend for it. It was $800. It wasn't the best car that I wouldn't buy it again, but and I wouldn't even buy the color of car that I bought. But I set a goal to buy a car by a certain point, and I did it. And so that was my kind of SMART approach. And we talk about our core values are smart pros.
Yeah.
And so we talk about being smart all the time. I think that's part of it. Certainly another building block is the budgeting and the cash flow management. Mm-hmm. How do you get to the point where you start setting the budget, knowing how much you have to work with, and then actually creating a flow to that, and it really is a flow. That's how you look at it. Is you've got whether it's $1,000 or $2,000 a month to spend, what percentage should go towards that? I've been doing auto finance now for way too many years, 45 years. But one of the things that we talk about, just for an example, for auto buyers, we know that we shouldn't go more than a 15% payment to income. So your payment versus what your gross income is, it should not exceed 15%. If it does, you're putting that person in danger because they have other bills. They have their rent or their mortgage, and that's going to be probably 2 times that. And then they've got all those other things, heating, you name it. And then if they have children, diapers, and you got everything else. And so, I'd say the next is probably savings, and actually emergency management is probably one of the most important lessons I learned is life is going to throw a bunch of curveballs at you really early. I had, as a junior in college, I had to go to my grandma, and that didn't work out really well because she gave me the money, but she said, don't ever ask me for money again. So I returned it with interest 2 days later and said, I don't need your money, but I found another way to do it, and it was legal. I found another way to, get that emergency cash that I needed to be able to still go to college. And by then I was married too. And I got married after my sophomore year in college, and so I had a lot of pressure. I put a lot of pressure on myself to have those emergency funds, and I've needed that throughout. I got laid off once in my career. It was about 20 years ago. I never would have thought that happened, but one important lesson that I learned from that personally is, thank goodness I had I had saved a bunch of money, and I had, quite frankly, 9 months worth of living or excess cash on hand to be able to pay the bills for that 9 months, just in case I couldn't find a job. Now, I found a job within a month, but at least I had that, and so that was a big thing. Debt management's always really, really important. Responsible debt management, learning what the difference between good debt and bad debt
Sure.
is.
Oh, yeah.
What high interest rates are and what low interest rates are. What high dividends on your savings are, that kind of thing. And so that's always important. I think another building block is investing in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Always think ahead. Think about the next step that you're going to go on in your life, and if you do that, then I think you're going to get ahead as well. And then I think, and I love that you used, there's some analogies, there's some biblical analogies about building a strong base,
Sure.
and that kind of thing too. So one of the analogies that I always think of is part of that base is developing sound financial habits, and just making sure that that if you build those strong financial habits, you're not going to forget them.
Right.
In fact, if you do the right things, you're going to build upon that, and you're going to build that base even stronger. And so that's good. And then I would say the last building block is always to remember to seek professional advice, and that it's okay to do that, quite frankly. And we have a couple of programs here at Silver State Schools Credit Union, in addition to what you're doing, which is the Balance Program and Money Moves, that are two programs that are free to our members, and we do that with a purpose, and that's to be able to teach them to go to another source to get, and it's anonymous, by the way, too. If they want to create a budget, they don't have to share that with the credit union unless they want to. That's up to them. And so, never be afraid to seek financial advice, because, quite frankly, you're probably going to need it all the way through your adult life.
Oh, yeah.
Talk to a tax professional.
Yeah,
That kind of thing.
There's a lot of things, and with all of that, we're building a huge financial house, right?
Right.
All of the things that you mentioned, from like setting the concrete all the way to finishing the roof, right?
Right.
There are a lot of things that we should all be doing, and I love that you really put that into perspective. One of the things I know is you got to have a plan, right? You must have a plan. I know previously I spoke how people feel that budgeting is very restricting, and it's almost like you're in, a jacket, if you will. But when you have that plan, you want to make a plan for your money, or your money will make a plan for you in the wrong way. So I think that everything that you said, which when you continue to listen to the Financial Seeds podcast, we're going to talk about all this stuff, right? This is just episode number 1, so you're kind of getting a lot of things, but we're going to go episode by episode to really help our community plant those financial seeds so that they can grow and mature and get all the things that they want to do. I have another question, since we're really talking about parents. Let's talk about the parent who may not be, financially astute.
Right.
They don't know anything.
Yeah.
At least that's what they feel.
Right.
And let's say that they stumbled onto the podcast, they are a member, and say, where do I start? Like, what advice do you have for that individual who's leading their family? Maybe they're a single parent.
Yep.
What type of advice do you have for them to encourage them to still be a part of their financial legacy?
Yeah, and I'm glad you asked that, JimDre. I think that's probably the most important thing, is not to ever feel embarrassed.
Yeah.
It's okay not to know certain things. Financial matters are complex matters. For the most part. And so as you get down to that, that's really the first thing. Don't feel ashamed. Go out and get help and ask for help. I can tell you right now, Silver State Schools Credit Union, and I'm not just doing a plug for our credit union because I think we're the best, but I do think we're the best. But I'm not just making a plug. I'm saying that we have those those resources available to you, and we want to give that information. Is why we created the information in the first place. And the depth of what we have is incredible. The fact that you're on track to do 250 of these financial literacy seminars this year in one form or fashion or another is incredible. The fact that we did 150 or more than 150 last year as a starting point is incredible, and it makes me proud to be part of this organization. And long after I retire, I'll be able to point at that and say that's something that I'm really proud that our organization, not me, our organization did, and really you started it, and so I couldn't be more pleased, JimDre.
Oh, thank you. Couldn't have done it by myself. We're growing, no longer a team of one. We have a team of two now, and just really looking forward to continuing to help that parent, that community that you're talking about. I've learned that it's not about being perfect. It's about being present.
Right.
And the fact that they may be listening right now, that's being present.
Absolutely.
Going to our workshops, that's being present.
Right.
And just being a member of Silver State Schools Credit Union shows that, hey, you care about your money, you care about your finances, and we're trying to be that community partner to help grow that money for you. So we're almost done.
Okay.
You've been killing it, but we understand you're a busy man. So we have one final question before we wrap this thing up. So what is one thing, maybe one step that families can take this week to continue to grow their home financially strong?
Yeah, and we talked about this before, is that it's never too early or too late. I think to pick up the phone, for us to make ourselves very, very available to them, and for us to be able to pick up the phone when they call, and to be accessible. It's really talking about, from my perspective, again, along the lines of it never being too early or never being too late, just understanding that you can do it and without embarrassment too. Yep. And it's a great thing to pick up the phone and do the right thing for you and your family. And I think you've said a lot of great things about why it's so important. And so we just need to continue on that track. And so it's really that never too early, never too late, and being present, being in the moment, and us having the resources for you.
I love it. Well, Scott, again, I know that you have other things to do. Being president and CEO of Silver State Schools Credit Union, we thank you for being our very first guest again here at Financial Seeds Podcast in the Scott Arkills production studio. What we would like to do is, now we have an ask for you, our listeners and our viewers. Since this is our very first podcast, we would love for you to like, subscribe, and comment to our YouTube page and our streaming platforms. We would also, if you're on social media, to follow us on our social media pages. And last but not least, we want you to share this podcast essentially with everybody that you know, especially those parents who are trying to grow their finances within their home to create a powerful legacy for their families. So again, please share this, like, subscribe, do all of that, because we're going to see you next week. We can't wait to continue to grow this with you. Again, my name is JimDre Westbrook, and we want you to continue to plant those financial seeds every single day of the week. Take care.
The Financial Seeds Podcast is powered by Silver State Schools Credit Union. Hosted by JimDre Westbrook, co-hosted by Brianna Chavez, produced by Leandre Fox, and created in the Scott Arkills production studio. The Financial Seeds Podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and is not intended as financial, legal, or tax advice. All opinions expressed are those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views of Silver State Schools Credit Union. Listeners should consult with a qualified financial professional for advice specific to their individual situation.